Hello, it is the 52 List podcast with me, Moorea Seal, and today my guest is the one and only, my soul sister, one of my best friends of all time, Callie Little. Welcome, Callie Little.
Thank you.
Let me just give your very professional bio. Callie Little is a full-time artist and writer. She's written for places like Bust Magazine, Vice, Teen Vogue, Auto Straddle, and more, and has been featured on NPR's Life Kit. Her visual art has been shown in galleries throughout the Pacific Northwest, and these days you can find her tattooing at the private studio Good Habits in Ballard neighborhood here in Seattle. I have one of her tattoos on my leg, which was inspired by the project that we are working on, and we will talk about more. The Pocket Coven, which she co-hosts with licensed therapist Amber Lenore, has 90,000 downloads and has been ranked the third most popular mental health podcast in Iceland. Her forthcoming debut book, co-authored with yours truly, Every Little Thing You Do Is Magic, will be on shelves in the spring of 2024. Callie, welcome.
Right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Namaste.
I've been so excited for you to start your podcast.
Thank you. It's a joy.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Been, just months of being anxious about it, and finally we're here. And I just want to have some real, honest conversations with people I adore, such as yourself. And I want to force them.
I only want to lie. So
you what?
I said I only want to lie. So
oh, great.
You
are my.
I'm only here for fake and lie conversations.
Oh, great. That's what I love. I love that about us. We only lie to each other.
Yeah. It was an easy yes, because obviously I would say yes to doing any project with you, but also because I have an entire shelf of your books, as one must. If you are friends with an author, you had better have that writer's books on your shelf. Otherwise, what are you even doing?
What kind of friend would I be if I didn't force everything I make upon you?
What kind of friend would I be if I didn't know where it was? It's got a place of prominence. It's right above my desk in the makerspace where I'm recording this right now.
And if you are watching the YouTube version of this, you will see the space that Callie is in has 5,000 different projects happening at once. Yeah. Callie, not only is she a writer and a podcaster, but she also just is good at everything she picks up. So she does clay one time, becomes a ceramic artist, does tattooing one time, becomes a tattoo artist. She can do it all. And it's one of her, we are both autistic. It's one of her magical autistic skills, is being good at everything.
Yeah, jack of many trades, master of none. And the rest of that saying is like something along the lines of, but still better than a master of one. And I think that that's so true. Also, having ADHD, I've got to keep up novelty in my life. I've got to switch up my projects. So yeah, if you're seeing this, it is not the cutest room in my house, but this is the maker space. So we have behind me, there's like a laser cutter, an engraving machine. We've got a risograph back here, which is a printer for some really cool art. We've got a photo light box over here. We've got a Cricut over here, stuff everywhere. 2 3D printers right next to me. I don't use those. I don't know how to use them. But I live in a big creative home, and yeah, I think it's just fun to try stuff and not be, fettered down with perfectionism. That's not my style.
Yeah, that's my style. Just kidding.
Which is why we're a good team. I go hard and say, this is what we're doing. And you say, we're going to make it really good. And we're like 2 horses going in the opposite direction. And yet somehow we get to the finish line. And it's been a safe, efficient, effective journey. Yeah. And great.
It's like we're both going sideways, but forward at the same time, tethered to each other.
The tension. Yeah. But I think that it's that case in like every relationship. But when you are doing like a work project together, it's so much more solidified what you have to talk about, how you have to work together. And so you and I have really gotten to know that part of our friendship over the past 3 years that we've been working
Yeah,
on this book.
3 years. So what led us to this moment here is that a few years ago, Callie and I had the dream of creating something together, ideally a book, something we could publish, something with our names on it in a physical realm. So we thought up the book that we are now calling Every Little Thing You Do Is Magic, which is a workbook for learning the tarot. And while learning it, you don't have to be new to tarot to use this workbook. It's about deepening your spiritual practice, your mental health practice, your self-care practices while utilizing tarot.
Mhm.
And in addition
Yeah.
to that, we are also designing and creating a tarot deck. So we had this idea 2 to 3 years ago. We worked really hard at different visions. We scrapped a lot of things. We pitched to a bunch of different publishers. We put it on the back burner. We brought it back out again. And thankfully, we are now working on it through Clarkson Potter. It will be published in 2024. And we just completed the first draft of our manuscript last week. Congratulations!
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been such a long journey. We started it in the first couple months of the pandemic. You and I were each trying to figure out how to make money. You were figuring out if you were going to continue having a retail business. I don't know, what was I doing? I was still selling jewelry.
Yep, you were running your jewelry shop.
Yeah, which was an Etsy based business. And we both needed a way to make money. So individually, it wasn't like we talked about it, we just as individuals started reading tarot for money, which we had each had as a part of our life for years by that point. And I remember I saw you doing tarot readings on Instagram, and I had this moment of feeling like, oh, I wish Moorea would ask me to do tarot with her. And then I was like, what am I saying? Like, I wish my friend would do a thing that I didn't even think to do until right now. I could just ask my friend if she wants to do that with me. So it was like, for a moment, I was projecting this sense of blame. And then I realized that that was bullshit. And I was like, hey, would you want to do that with me? And you were like, yeah, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
That
Throw me a pitch and I will whatever. What this is a sport. This is me trying to do a sports reference.
It's a tiny baseball bat.
Yes, I have a very
little.
small baseball bat. I love when people throw thoughts at me, and I don't throw it back. This is terrible.
Listen,
No.
we're not the sports kind of gays. We're the tarot kind of gays.
Yeah, we're the tarot gays, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, it's always been that way with you. I think that when we met, we met as the Moorea CLTM was invited to this event that little old journalist me was also invited to, and we were put in a cabin together. And I said, "Oh, Moorea Seal, like the shop," and you went, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "Oh, don't worry, I've never read your books." And you were like, "Thank God. Okay, cool." And we hung out, and I was like, "Yeah, it must be hard to like have people, quote unquote, know you." And I got to see some of that happen. Some people, cry because they saw you, and I was like, "Oh, that's weird." Okay. And we just kind of were glued to each other all weekend. Some woman was really mean about me, and I overheard her being mean. She was like talking shit about me in the bathroom. And I was laughing about it and told you, and you were like, "Where is she? I'll raise hell."
Confronted her,
Mhm.
I
We
just have big sister energy, and if I love someone, immediately I will protect you.
Yeah. And I think that we have both really done that for each other a lot. We've seen each other through some really rough things. So doing this really intense project, mainstream publishing a book is hard on its own. And then doing it with another person, obviously it comes with a lot of niceties. It comes with a lot of relief, but also you and I had never really split a creative project 50-50 to this scale. You've done so many things and I've done so many things, but this is a unique experience.
Yeah.
And it's
I think that's
certainly,
also what makes this project feel so fresh for both of us. For
mhm,
you, it is your first officially published book,
yeah,
which is huge.
yeah,
For me, it is my first time co-authoring a book. Though I have published many books, it's like when you've done something many times, it loses the joy, the newness, the excitement. And I really needed your joy, to witness your joy and your enthusiasm and your excitement, so I could get back into that first, I don't know, the first excitement space again.
yeah. Yeah, I remember you talking about that at the beginning, where, we kind of thought that the process for this was going to be similar to the trajectory that your individual career as an author has had. And it really hasn't been at all the same. It's been in no ways the same. And so the blueprint that you had going in, we like attempted to follow and just continually, I don't want to say we're let down. It's more like it just didn't work, because we haven't really been let down. We've got this dream publisher, the most perfect editor for this project that we could hope for. Like when we finally met Sarah in that meeting, we were both like, I'm in love. I'm in love. She's perfect. And I feel so fortunate and hashtag blessed for that. Um, but it's been a journey, and like you and I've gotten to know all these new parts of each other. We've gotten to really hone our communication skills and our friendship. We've really gone through a ton separately and together, and I'm so grateful for our experiences.
Likewise. And I'm so grateful that we are exactly our unique, weird, odd, strange selves. It's such a beautiful thing
Yeah.
to get to be queer people together, writing something that we hope will truly be inclusive to all people.
Mhm.
It's a joy to be two autistic people. No two autistic people are the same. There's this idea that an autistic person is just like a 4-year-old boy who loves dinosaurs and math and doesn't talk. There are so many more facets to autism than that archetype. And so it's also fascinating for us to get to work together and to see um, our specific challenges and our specific skills that we have because of who we are. And one thing that I love that you don't love is lists.
Yeah. I love a to-do list.
Sure.
But a conceptual list is not my
Brain says no,
go-to.
thank you.
Yeah, and not always, there are some things where it's like what I love gratitude lists, really simple things, but so the list that we're doing today, I'll let you introduce it and everything, but um I see I have the OG copy. But the list that we're doing today, when you asked me about it, I was like, oh, that's one I actually avoided because I don't even, the way that I think about it doesn't make sense. But I'll let you introduce it and then I'll explain what I mean by that.
Yeah, so today we are doing list number 2 from the 52 List Project. This is a journal series that I created and published. And Callie has done many of the lists in it, but didn't want to do list number 2, which is your favorite characters from books, movies, TV, etc. For me, this definitely, when I thought of this list prompt, it did feel like a challenge because I've never compiled that information, though I know that it sits somewhere in my body.
Mhm.
The reason why, well, I don't really know why I first chose to create that list, but after creating my own list, it made me massively see my own gender dysphoria. It made me see,
Hmm.
um, yeah, how I just didn't have much representation for the person that I feel I am inside. And so I attached myself to
Mm.
a bunch of these different characters in different ways. But so when I told Callie I wanted to fill out this list with her, and she said, "Oh God, please no." I said, "Well, what about, okay." So there aren't many characters that you admire. That's fair and fine and good, and I think is a reflection of your ability to observe others, to have sound judgment, and to see pieces of who they are that maybe you think is interesting, intriguing, but also have criticism of other parts. And of course, you're not just going to glom onto one character and be like, "It's me," or I'm obsessed with that person. I love that your brain does not overly attach to different characters. And so I also prompted Callie, what if you thought about, who are some different characters that you could criticize? Who are some different characters that you think reflect different archetypes in the tarot? Just explore it in your own unique way. So I'm curious to see what path you went down.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I sat down with it, and I think when you asked about this list and I was like, LOL, I was like, we can try it, because I feel like it's interesting that this is one that is so juicy for you, and one that, to me, I really have to think about it. And the reason I have to think about it is because when I'm participating in media, I don't really notice the characters as these individual parts so much as I notice them as plot devices. I really view media through a creative lens, and I feel like that sounds so pretentious, but listen, this is the way that I see the world. I
It's like a
love to
very
watch.
cerebral approach to observing
Yeah,
media with like some guards almost, some.
I guess. Well, I was thinking about ways this shows up in my life elsewhere. And for example, I am really rarely in my own dreams. It's not that I'm like observing myself or that I'm participating. It's like I'm watching a movie and I'm nowhere near reality. Also, like, to get just the slightest bit R-rated. When I have, steamy fantasies, I am never part of those. Again, it is like watching TV. So I think that it's not about, like, I don't know, I don't really see characters as individuals. They are just this like plot point to me. So I was thinking about that. And then I thought, well, like, okay, if how I view this prompt is what are your favorite movies, really? What are your favorite books? Then what are some pieces that exemplify that? So I'd be happy to share with you what I have.
Yes,
I don't
I
really
would
know.
love.
What format do you want for sharing this?
Just read it out loud.
Okay. I'm going to explain some too, because some of them are a
Do.
little less known. Okay. I also feel like this is such an intense view into the weirdest parts of my personality. It's very revealing.
But that's exactly what
So
I want. That's what I'm here for. I
great.
don't
We're
want
gonna get
surface
weird
level.
right away.
Yeah, I want to dig into the depths of Callie Little. So,
Yeah. Okay. Let's start off with the weirdest part. So Abby, from the book Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth. This is a book that just came out really recently, and it is so. Are we cursing on your
you
podcast,
can
or
curse
am I
here. Yes.
self-censored? Okay. It is so fucking weird. It, from page one, you learn, that this protagonist, Abby, really doesn't have a strong sense of self. She is so wrapped up in the idea of loving her husband loving her, and being this good wife. But also, she is slowly unraveling into madness throughout the book. And it ends with like cannibalism. It is an incredibly insane romp, and I highly recommend it. I'm going to clarify, because we're in the age of Army Hammer, that I don't have cannibalistic tendencies whatsoever.
I love that
But
about
the part that I identify with is her insatiable hunger for being loved. And it reminds
you.
me so much of when I was younger. And everything I did was in that like desire to be loved.
Yeah.
So I've got her, and I recommend that book. I've got Mimi from the Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. Have you read that one?
No.
I think you would like it. It's kind of a murder mystery, and Mimi is a lovesick teenager. And I don't know, I was thinking about the two of them in really similar ways because of the sad, broken-hearted girl
Yeah.
plus murder.
Plus
But
murder.
then, casual side of killing. I've got Francine from Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore. That's a graphic novel from like the late 90s and early 2000s. And the reason that I chose to write her down, I loved those graphic novels in my teenage years. And it was the first time I ever saw a plus size woman as the love interest, like the, oh my God, look how hot and beautiful and perfect she is. And she wasn't perfect. She was this like very average woman. And she wasn't fat, and I am fat, but it was still the first time I saw anybody, even with like the slightest bit of belly, presented
Yeah.
as being hot. And back then, that was quite a unique thing.
Yeah.
We love representation.
We do.
I've also got every character Miranda July has ever written, and I wrote down they're weird and complex, and sometimes they make me feel like the author watches me when I'm alone. They do the strangest things. And while I have never done this, one of my favorite examples is in her book, The First Bad Man. The protagonist is at her love interest's house, and she goes to the bathroom. She realizes that she has to do a number two. And as she's doing it, she thinks, this is the last poop I will ever have as a single woman. How precious it is. And she's like really getting romantic about this. And that is a step farther than I think I can go, but I love the absurdity of this like wild sense of romanticism
Yeah.
in her characters and just how wackadoo they are. I've got some random other ones, but those are really the highlights and what
Well,
I
it's like
could dredge up.
yeah, it's powerful for me to hear those things because I'm an outside observer, but because I know you, I know a lot about your life story. So I think it's something that I hear and see from those characters that you brought up. Like it totally makes sense to me that you
Mhm.
would be drawn to these characters because you're a Virgo. You are underneath your ability to be ferocious when you need to be, the murderess. You are so sensitive. You are
Mhm.
so tender. You are
Mhm.
so loving. And it seems
Mhm.
like all of these different characters embody those things. Like they have wacky, outward, outrageous qualities, but inwardly they are so soft.
Yeah.
And it's because of their softness that probably the outside is so wacky and wild.
Mhm.
And I think that's a quality I also relate to. Do you
Mhm.
feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your earlier life?
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've shared so much about it professionally anyway. The first really big, well, the first thing I ever published was with Bust Magazine, and it was called Mourning My Abuser, My Mother. And I grew up in really extreme poverty. I ended up being homeless as a teenager. But before that, was brought up in a really complex environment with, two mentally ill parents who were both hoarders, who both dealt with addiction in various ways. My father had been an alcoholic, and he was, as far as I know, he's on the wagon somewhere, but we haven't spoken in 10 years. And my mother had been addicted to meth and then cocaine and pills and then meth again. And it's not that they didn't, have love for me. It's that they really didn't have support. And so a lot of my life has been learning that those really hard to accept parts of my parents and my early life weren't really designed to hurt me. They did, but they were these systemic failures
Yeah.
from beyond the scope of my parents. While my parents were complicit in my abuse and the things that I've suffered in my life, they're also part of a really greater failure.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely grew up really craving softness and safety and love. And it makes, I don't know, your framing of it makes a lot of sense, that like that's what I'm kind of looking for in these characters. And interestingly, the whole like big personality thing, when I was younger, that drove me bananas when people were like, "You're such a big personality, you're so outgoing, you make friends with everybody," because it felt like it ignored those really tender pieces of me
Yeah.
to just reduce me to the easiest, biggest, brightest parts.
It's almost like
And
they
that's,
pointed out your coping mechanisms rather than acknowledging like the reason why you are presenting this way to the world.
yeah. But I mean, it's uncomfortable either way. It's uncomfortable to like be noticed, I think, especially when you are somebody who lives with complex PTSD. You know, a lot of the experience of having that is dissociation and depersonalization, which is also one of the reasons that I don't perceive myself in other characters and
Mhm.
dreams. It's all related to dissociation. So this like very topical and could be very frivolous list can actually go really deep
Yeah.
if you're really thinking about it. Like, I don't know, I think if a trigger comes up, you got to get curious about it.
Yeah. I'm glad that I could lovingly force you to fill this list out
You
because
just asked me and I was like, okay, all
fine,
right.
I don't do
Yeah.
it, but I think it's so sweet. Like I'm excited to see a peek at the different characters that you brought up too, but you know, those first three really speak to the person that you are. And I think it's so sweet. Like I think, you know, we're both people, and sweet, I think gets a bad rap. I think
Oh, I
it
love sweet.
when someone, yeah, when you're like called sweet, it can sound so like, well, aren't you sweet? Like so belittling. But I think sweetness can only exist in a space that's really vulnerable and really honest, really sincere. Sincerity is such a risk. And I think there is this advantage that we have in being autistic people, and that we are so sincere.
Mm.
uh, and it makes other people uncomfortable sometimes, but it's such a beautiful thing to gift that sincerity back to ourselves. I think we are, you know, I know for myself, like I observe the world with a really sincere sweetness. I just look at things very honestly and speak to things very honestly. But I also can feel so removed from myself, from my body, from my own identity. So I think that this list, this prompting, is you giving some sweetness to yourself, uh, getting to see yourself reflected back to you almost in a way that like you can't control the narrative.
Mhm.
You're outside of it, observing someone else, and you're having to force yourself to connect to someone else and uh, hear their narrative, and then view your personal narrative through their lens in a weird. I think it's probably that's also probably what was what makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable is you're like, oh, I'm dipping into facets of myself by connecting with this character. Um, and that's
Totally.
something
Yeah.
that it freaked me out when I filled out the list, realizing like, oh, I like almost all of my favorite characters are male. Almost all of my favorite characters are like young boys going through some sort of uh, adventure or journey of self-understanding, and they've been abandoned in some way or they're alone. Of course, Harry Potter, I love. Um, don't love JD Salinger, but do love Harry Potter, the character. I
Wait, do
love
you
the
mean
little,
J.K. Rowling?
what, who did I just say?
JD Salinger.
Oh, I'm sorry, JD Salinger, RIP. It's been a while, but didn't mean
The
you.
other J.
The other J. J.K. Rowling, not a fan of.
Right. It makes sense you would just not say her name, you know.
Don't speak.
Yes, we can love the art of that person and not the artist.
Yeah. Yep. So unfortunate. But the one uh female character that I put down is Matilda and Mrs. Honey from Matilda, because it
I wrote
felt
down
like,
Matilda as well.
yeah, it's like every woman that I know and love, that's like a common thread that we have, is loving Matilda.
Oh yeah.
Because it is that child who's having to exist on her own and create magic from whatever she has on hand. She is so courageous. She's so determined. As I think of that book now, I'm like, she really exemplifies to me like an archetype of an autistic girl. um,
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah.
beautiful to also think about how powerful she is. Uh, but that's the only person born into a female sex, female body, whatever, that as a, I don't know, as I reflect back on different characters, and I'm like, okay, I can identify with that one.
Yeah. Wow, there are so many juicy things in what you just said. And yeah, Matilda's such an icon for so many of us, such an icon for me because I, even as a child, I got to see my reality reflected. It was so similar to
Mhm.
the depiction in the Danny DeVito film.
Yeah,
Um, and so I think her parents were more functional than mine, but it was so inspiring to see this smart little girl who was not, she wasn't the protagonist because she was like the cutest child.
yeah,
She was a cute enough kid, but it wasn't that she was pretty. And that was also such a unique story for a protagonist. If a woman is in the center stage of anything at any age, her beauty is always part of it. And to have this little girl just be a little girl and dress like a little girl
yeah,
and have it be about her sense of bravery and curiosity and courageousness and her big heart, and not have her succumb to the very intense sadness that was surrounding her. Really beautiful. Also, it's fascinating to me that you identify so strongly with male protagonists because even now, my whole life and even now, I have always avoided male narratives. I notice that there are just so many of them. I'm like, been there, done there, done it, heard it, don't need it.
yeah,
But there are so many, and there are some that I love, like The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which reminds me a lot of what you're saying. You know, the protagonist is this boy who loses his mom and everything and has to hide this kind of terrible secret that's also really beautiful. Um, and there are those pieces that really transcend gender and sex. So I don't know. It's interesting that you noticed a gender dysphoria within your list.
yeah. For me, I think it was because growing up, I was the oldest of three girls. Um, and my name was Ashley. And growing up in England, Ashley was a boy's name. So I got mistaken for being a boy all the time. I was pretty gender fluid. I grew up in a village of 400 people and was just kind of, a little genderless hobbit playing in the fields.
Mhm.
So people thought I was a boy often, and it was kind of uncomfortable, but also I didn't really care. And then moving to the US in 1994, I met American Ashleys, which are the stereotype of like bubbly Ashley. And I was not that. I had a deeper voice. I was really cerebral for an 8-year-old. I'd been through a lot of trauma. I was a very stoic little child. And the American label of girly Ashley didn't make sense. The American label of girl, period, did not make sense to me. And so I always had this battle going on inside of myself. Sure, I like some things that are labeled girly, but I feel really masculine. I just don't identify with the label of girl. Today, I still feel comfortable with the term woman because I've grown up in this body and had to do a lot of work in accepting myself as a quote unquote woman. But I also love the word non-binary because it also explains and defines so much of who I've been my whole life that didn't have a name. So when I look at all these different little boy characters, I'm like, yeah, that's who I felt I was. I didn't care about being
Yeah.
pretty. I didn't care about all of the, every narrative about a little girl in most books or stories is about like falling in love and having a boy rescue you. And I wasn't interested in any of that. My dad would tell me growing up, I just want you to find a nice rich man who will take care of you. And I was like, I want to take care of myself. I can do it myself. I will figure it out myself. I got me. No, thank
Yeah.
you.
In the words of Cher, Mom, I am a rich man.
Exactly. Cher gets it. I wish
Yeah.
that I had heard that quote from her when I was younger, because I would have been like, exactly. I just want to become Cher.
Oh,
That's
I
all.
mean, I wish I would have known you when I was a child, because what you're saying is so opposite to how I grew up. I saw the depiction of femininity as instructional,
Mhm.
and not in a way that was like, oh, so I just do this. It was like all of these things don't make sense, and so something is wrong with me.
Oh, yeah.
I remember I remember thinking that it was impossible that I was actually a girl simply because I farted.
Oh.
That, and it's because of this weird Southern saying that my grandfather had, which is like, girls don't fart, they fluff. And I was like, well, I fart, so I don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, I must not be a girl. Being a hyper literal,
Yeah.
undiagnosed autistic kid, being
Yeah.
like, oh, well, yeah, I think that if I had been able to see the celebration of being a girl and not being all those things, but also not being just a tomboy. That was the only other option in the 90s, was you're either this girly girl or you were a backwards baseball cap girl.
Yeah.
And I was neither of those. And
Yeah.
I still am neither of those. Which
I'm
is
a
why
little bit
I
of both of
identify.
those.
Yeah, exactly. The non-binary woman thing. You and I have had such parallel journeys in our, neurodiverse explorations, and also our gender explorations, where we're both like, oh, autistic, oh, ADHD, oh, non-binary, but also woman.
Yeah.
Because the box of woman is just so small and limiting and impossible.
Yeah. It's very hard to live up to America's definition of what a woman is supposed to be. We both also grew up within Christian culture, and there's a big old definition of who you're supposed to be as a woman. I went to Christian college. I did not go to Christian high school, but I did go to Christian college. Um, and I remember that was the point where I started to try and contort myself into the box of who I thought society needed me to be. I didn't have the capacity to mask very well when I was younger, even though I was not diagnosed autistic yet. But I realized that if I want to make friends, I need to perform a little bit.
Mhm.
So college was absolutely the journey of that, of dressing way more feminine, um, of trying to be more friendly, of growing my hair long, of doing all the things that I thought were like the rules of the Bible, of being a good woman. I was
I
telling my
mean, isn't that the whole journey that led to you really gaining internet fame?
It is. It is. Yes. My, especially when it comes to fashion, the way that I viewed women's fashion was kind of as like art objects, pretty art objects. I'm drawn to pretty, yes,
Mhm.
but I was able to kind of detach myself from it and just collect pretty things to create this vision board of femininity. And that's how I built 1 million followers on Pinterest on accident, was by collecting, organizing uh, this vision of who I wanted to be. That's what got me my first influencer gigs 10 years ago. That's what led me down the path of opening a retail storefront. It was like I think of a lot of the women's hyper feminine fashion that I wore was like my armor, my protector from you seeing the weird little androgynous chaos monster that lived inside of me that wasn't acceptable to the public until 2020. Just, I needed that shield. And I studied it and I learned it and I practiced it and I wore it and then I shed it because I no
Yeah.
longer needed it, by understanding myself more and my queer identity and understanding that I am very neurodivergent.
What a mind fuck though to have this like, I'm guessing semi-conscious, semi-subconscious knowledge that you have to put on, you know, an act in a way. It's always an extension of ourselves, but to have to play up this one aspect of yourself and then have so much validation of that. It's like,
Yeah,
yes, good job. You are doing it so well. Keep doing that. Like, how much pressure and how limiting. I think that, when we're presenting ourselves really from a place of developed sense of self, it can be lovely to have that. But one of the biggest hurdles, I think, of social media is that we get so much feedback all the time that it doesn't leave us room to feel how we feel about ourselves.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, it doesn't just apply to a white girl putting on girlier clothes, getting more validation, but it applies to any person who's in a marginalized group who has the ability to code switch.
Mhm.
It's it's built into the American way to try and
Mhm.
homogenize yourself so that
Yeah.
you can function in the world of patriarchal white society. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think many of us go through conscious or unconscious conditioning in trying to fit into what society at large will say is right and good. Um, and I know that when I started to finally wake up to that and see that, it was devastating
Mhm.
and uncomfortable to peel off, to reveal the person underneath, because I also knew I would lose privileges. I would lose attention. I would lose validation,
Relationships.
relationships.
Yeah.
But it also was what was right
Mhm.
and ultimately most healthy for me. Um, it's a strange journey waking up to yourself, waking up to seeing where you are just living out an archetype or a character uh, versus living a very authentic life. And I think that's bringing it back to this list. I think that's also, it seems to me, for the years that I have known you, and what you've told me about your younger life, that you, I know when you were younger, you say that you really felt like you had to perform girliness, but you you just seem like you've always had a very loud, authentic voice inside, still questioning. and saying, I feel uncomfortable. I just am not going to push myself that way when it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And that feels like that being grounded in that space, being aware of that inner voice saying, I must be true to myself, is what has finally gotten to the point that you're at now.
Mhm.
You have allowed yourself to explore so many facets of self, explore different creative outlets to finally come to a place where you can create something that not only speaks to your voice, that isn't defined by other people's narratives and other characters. And you're literally creating a book to help other people find their voice, to help other people feel assured in the person that they are through the archetypes of the tarot, not attaching too much to the archetypes, but just laying some examples so that you can define yourself on your own terms.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you and I each, as I was editing our draft, I noticed that we both constantly wrote inner knowing
Mm.
because because that is what it's about. It's about like getting in touch with our own perspective and seeing the world knowing that we're looking out from that place rather than looking at the world through the lens that we're told we're supposed to, like saying like, oh, well, I'm supposed to be really feminine. Like I have felt that pressure. I haven't really lived by it because I'm distracted. Like just as much as I might feel that pressure, I'm really excited about this thing that just looks super gay or really colorful or really simple and plain and minimal, um, and maybe not feminine at all.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it makes sense that we have both worked so hard on a tool to help other people with that because we've both really struggled with it in very different ways. And I was thinking when you were saying, like, yeah, when I started that 10 years ago, I was thinking about where I was at 10 years ago. And I remember feeling like I had just woken up. Like
Mm.
my life hadn't even started until I was 23.
What things were
Because
happening at the age of 23, or what was
oh,
transitioning in that few year gap?
oh my God, so much. So I was engaged to somebody when I was like 20, and he was perfectly fine. We weren't a good match. We didn't really have any shared interests other than like making stupid jokes, but we all love that. And he had a really hard time with physical affection, with verbal affirmations, which are two huge love languages for me. We didn't have the same aesthetics, we didn't have the same goals in life. But coming from the background I did for years, I felt like, okay, this person doesn't treat me badly. Oh, wow, I'm so lucky. I'm
Yeah,
so lucky I finally found this person who isn't going to abuse me.
yeah.
And I thought that's what true love was. And I mean, I really would have said that like, oh, I love him because I feel safe. I knew he wasn't going to leave me. And when I at the age of like 2021 started really branching out and pursuing my interests, I was like volunteering and teaching body image workshops to girls aged 12 to 75.
Aw.
And I had just made up this workshop and started doing it. And I was working as a sex educator. And I was also helping out in an after school program at an elementary school as an assistant. And I was acting in and producing the vagina monologues. And one day I just realized that I was so in love with my life, my friends, my job, all the things I was doing. And I was like, oh, wow, I don't love this guy at all. Like, I care
Mhm.
about him, but I'm not happy being in a romantic partnership. And I feel like I'm limited by feeling like this social bondage to this person.
Mm.
And when I broke up with him, it was really hard. I was afraid of losing this person that had been my only constant for years. And I did lose him, which, hurt in the moment, but it really wasn't a loss. And I remember the first night that I moved out, I like broke up with him one night. It was the closing of the Vagina Monologues. And the next day I moved out, and I never cried once after leaving that house. Like snuggled down into my little full size bed of being single. And I was like, I love that I can just spread out in this bed. I love
Mhm.
this. And for the next couple of years, I was just like joyfully single and adventuring in my life. And it felt like, oh, this is what it's like to be alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a powerful thing, and I think a gift that not many people take advantage of because of the fear of unknown,
Yeah.
the fear of being alone.
Yeah.
So much of our childhoods are defined by uh, abuse or loneliness, even within a healthy setting. So the idea of choosing to be alone and that being a joyful experience feels so elusive. That's
Mhm.
something that I was so afraid to experience when I got divorced. But it was in those last few years of being married to a lovely man, but one whose path was so opposite of mine, um, realizing I didn't want to use a partner to hide or cover up my own loneliness. I need to be alone and to learn to love that alone and then choose someone to be with uh, while I know that I've already established purpose on my own. Uh, yeah, fine. Taking that space to just be by yourself and really love your life is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so that's, I don't know, I think it's really amazing that you were able to do that while in your early 20s
Mhm.
when most of culture is pushing people to pair up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was a wild time. I remember how scary it was to make those choices. And even without like wanting to be partnered up again, God, I left that relationship and I was like, I am never getting married and I'm never living with someone again. And then I got married when I was 25 and I've been with that beautiful human ever since. um, but I remember sitting in my car, knowing I really had to leave Humboldt County. And I ended up moving to Santa Cruz. But before I realized where I was going to be going, all I knew was that my life in Humboldt County was coming to a close and I had to make a choice. And I remember weeping in the driver's seat of my car and just being like, there's nobody else that can help me make this decision. I have to do it on my own. I want anyone else to do it. I hate
Yeah.
this because it's scary when it's the very first time you have to do that.
Mhm.
But just because something is scary doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Where do you think in the journey of the major arcana, what card do you think represents that first taking risk or going out on your own?
Well, the fool, obviously,
Yeah.
the classic. Um, but I think, that year of realizing what joy I had and what I needed to leave behind in order to move on to the next part was the chariot.
Mm,
Um, that kind of temporary and somewhat surface level, but very integral celebration of having, come so far in the journey with miles to go, with the harder shit to go. But, something we talk about in our book is that the cycle is both a lifelong one and a perpetually in motion one. So
yeah.
I don't know my lifelong cycle where I was at then. but there were a lot of archetypes at play for sure.
Yeah. Is there anybody else on your list of characters that you want to call out while we still have time?
I mean, Anne of Green Gables, we love an orphan. Steven Universe, also kind of an orphan now that I'm thinking about it. I love an orphan. Louis from the new Interview with a Vampire TV series. That shit is so gay and hot and good. Recommended. And finally, I think the most controversial character, Jenny Schechter from the L Word.
Jenny. Ooh, okay.
I love her. She's such a messy bitch
Mhm.
and she doesn't hide it. She's like, the beginning, she's like, I don't know, I'm bi-curious. And then at the end, she's like, I'm insane. Deal with it. Never once does that woman back down from being herself, even though she's a monster and she knows it. And I just really love that about her.
It's true. And I feel like we're kind of waiting. We got some kind of updates and conclusions from characters that were really demonized in the original L Word, in the new
I haven't watched it.
Oh, well, it's not that great. It's really not. My partner and I, Vic, we watch it and we mostly rip it to shreds because we're like,
Well,
I know
that's so
no
fun.
one like this. I know so many queer, lesbian, wonderful human beings, and no one is like any of these characters. But
Yeah.
Jenny, I feel like I've met a lot of Jennies.
Oh,
And
definitely.
in the original L Word, there was some shaming towards being bisexual.
Mhm.
And she took a lot of the brunt of that. So I feel like in the new L Word, there needs to be some redemption for a woman who's going through it and willingly is going through it. It's okay to be bisexual. It's okay to be bi-curious. It's okay to be pansexual. All of those things are welcome within this community. The old narratives, there's some old rusty narratives in the original L Word that could definitely be updated. And I bet that in current culture, Jenny would get some better support.
I agree. I think she needed a good therapist and maybe not such an incestuous queer community.
Yeah.
And we all struggle with that, listen. But you know, I have a hot take about queerness in general, which is that I think if you are attracted to any form of femininity, you're gay. Period. um, that's it. I'm not even gonna elaborate. That's my hot
There
take.
you go. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I can say, I was a very late in life queer bloomer. Took me a long time to really piece it apart. But probably one of the most comedic elements of my late in life coming out is that most of the men that I dated when I was younger were often mistaken as being women because of their beautiful soft skin and rosy cheeks and luscious lips. I do find myself attracted to a very effeminate man. And then the qualities that I love in women, I tend to, if there's like a spectrum of like hyper feminine, hyper masculine, I'm usually attracted to gender blobs in the middle. I love a masculine, energied woman who also loves to knit and crochet and darned her
Yes.
socks and, the sweet little domestic things that she does because she loves them, not because a man told her she has to.
Yeah, you know, if you can take a big helping of every gender and smush them together into a casserole, that's what I find attractive.
Delicious.
Gender casserole. Yeah.
It definitely has squishy potatoes in it. We want some squish
Yeah.
in that delicious meat.
Who are the squishy potatoes of media? Who are the like yummy
Who are the
cinnamon roll
squishy
characters?
potatoes? What? All right, this is a new list I need to create. List your favorite squishy potatoes in media.
Luna Lovegood.
Oh, yeah, you know you're gay if you either wanted to be Luna Lovegood or were kind of in love with Luna Lovegood.
And as a bonus, you know that you're autistic if either of those is the case as well.
You are absolutely on the neurodivergent train.
Yeah.
If you love Luna, this is the truth.
Well,
Well,
what are your other characters on your list?
some of my other characters, all of the children in Lemony Snicket stories.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Orphans. We love orphans.
We love orphans. We love them. Who else? Who else? Jonathan and Everything is Illuminated. He's kind of got orphan energy. He's going back to his homeland or his family's homeland to uncover the stories, the hidden stories of his past. Everybody in Stardust, everybody in the Shadow of the Wind series, The Little Prince, Santiago and the Alchemist. I love anybody on a mystical journey, learning about the world, philosophizing as they go. Anything, any of the characters written by Kafka. Again, people kind of like in a surrealist space, exploring self and identity.
Ooh,
That's all magical to me.
all of the women from the Hours.
Ooh, you are such a Virgo. You harness all of this like power, feminine power energy. I am like if you were like I don't know, if we were characters in a book, I feel like you would be some sort of queen or powerful witch.
Love it.
And I would be the little page boy who is like coming up with his own little schemes and like playing with mice in the
I want you
castle.
to know that the characters that I'm bringing into my mind based on what you're saying are that I am this like 1960s lounge, like long coat. I don't know. I'm imagining smoking incense for some reason. Kind of like juicy mother energy. And I'm imagining you as a newspaper selling child going,
Yes.
extra, extra.
Yes, that is my energy. Yes, it is. Yep.
I mean, I would say, gosh, I think you are this like very avant-garde human being, to put it so generally. I think in a movie you would be the really cool like curator of a museum, and then as soon as the scene shows the museum door shutting, you like sit down with a joint and start playing Candy Crush on your phone. Just something absurdly mainstream to contrast the extreme, like curated, really beautiful aspect.
This is quite literally me. This is I'm like, I don't know if this is that abstract. This is pretty accurately me.
Yeah. Yeah. God, I don't know what I am. I think I'm like a Pokemon.
Pokemon. And I'm a Pokemon. So in our own worlds, we are ridiculous little tiny characters.
Yeah.
We definitely embody the fool in the tarot, but to each other, we are
Very elevated.
very
Not pedestalized, I don't think.
No.
Just yeah, I think that we see each other's complexity in a really beautiful way.
Yeah.
And I think in general, humans see ourselves pretty ridiculously because we know all the dumb shit that we think.
Yeah. And if you're someone who's not able to see the silliness within yourself, I'd really encourage you to explore it, because it's such a bummer to have to present as all knowing and all powerful all the time. That doesn't make you a better person. It's just exhausting. Be the Pokemon you want to see in the world.
Yeah, Callie. That's my little Pokemon sound. Yeah. say the dumb thing. Listen, when Moorea and I are not recording, we are constantly saying things in different accents, making songs up out of nothing. Also, the fact that we both have clean hair today is really impressive.
Yes.
Our various shags to fit in as cool kids with a TM on it.
You
You
know, the
know,
other day, a friend who did not know me pre-2020, I always looked professional, and my hair is naturally fairly straight and very heavy. So most of my life, I had a pretty blunt cut, and even in the most casual clothes, I looked really severe and harsh. So she laughed and was shocked when she saw a very professional me. But yeah, I think I have to have a shaggy cut. Well, what's talking? Something's talking at me. Okay.
computer wants to be invited to the conversation.
Please try again.
Okay, end. Thank you.
Something went wrong.
Yeah, I think I need to be a shaggy little newsboy from the 70s forever, just to keep myself feeling normal and not so uptight.
It's so cute. You know, we met with me having a pixie cut, which I really enjoyed and am no longer wanting. It's now my hair is long, and you had these two super thick, beautiful, long braids, which I cannot imagine you having anymore, but also, wow, I was in awe of your hair when we met. I was like, damn, that's the hair I wish I had. I love my curls and everything, but you do naturally have really great hair.
I do. It just doesn't feel right to my personality to not be a little scruffy shag thing. At least not right now.
Yeah. When we get to be all the things. We get to try out the periods of our life where we feel very, intensely one thing, and then be like, oh no, not anymore. Life is a highway, and you just got to ride it all night long,
Exactly. When I wake up, that's exactly what I kind of think of. Yeah, it just comes.
Yeah.
Well, I have loved having you on the podcast today. I have loved getting to explore the characters that resonate with you. I'm so grateful that you took the time to do it, even when it maybe was uncomfortable or you weren't interested, because it reveals a lot. And I love the person underneath it all. The
Well,
one and only, the Callie.
the Callie Little. Thank you for having me on. And doing hard things with people you love makes them a lot easier. So thank you for inviting me to get a little uncomfortable. I'm so good at being uncomfortable.
Well, that is our natural state. Again, you know
True.
that you're likely autistic if you're always uncomfortable.
Yes. Life is a tag scratching at the back of my neck, and it can never be cut off until finally I'm released from this mortal coil.
One day.
Someday it'll happen. So until then, gotta just do whatever I want.
Like writing a book.
Like writing a book, like petting my small dog,
Yeah.
and like doing whatever I feel like doing tomorrow. We get to be whoever we want to be.
Thanks. And I appreciate you.
I appreciate you and I love you. And thanks for listening, folks. If you want to get more of my work, I have a podcast called The Pocket Coven that we mentioned. You can get it wherever podcasts are held. And we actually talked this week about sacred aloneness, which really works with today's chat with you. And you can also get in touch with me on my website, callielittle.com, or on Instagram, where I am most of the time at Gosh Callie.
Perfect. We'll see you everywhere.
I'll see
That's
you.
all for now.